you've seen Florida State this year, just like I have. It's been a total disaster. It went from the biggest boom to the biggest bust that I think I've ever seen in 1 to 2 year periods in college football, at least in recent memory. So you and I were just talking before we hit record. So I said, hold on, I just shh you. And I said, let's just talk about this on air. Do you think that a situation can get so bad in a season that it reverberates beyond the season? It poisons the well permanently, and it got so bad that you can't hit reset. You can't hit the flush button and just get things back to normal. And could be the case with Norvell. There are a few other instances around the country, but that's the most extreme one. And then the other thing I start to think about is in the modern age of college football, you are more likely to have situations like this where you just strike it rich in the portal one year. And so it goes sky high.
Yeah.
And you can't recreate that. And it bottoms out, which leads us to have this kind of conversation. But you said something right before we started talking about, man, if you hit that lottery, people may expect you to hit the lottery every year, which got me to thinking Mike Norvell, good coach, doesn't have the track record necessarily of a Kirby or a Nick Saban or anything like that. So there were still questions around him up to last year. And then I think people had their questions eased and their minds eased. And maybe that's a little akin to saying, this guy won the lottery. We're going to invite him to business school to speak. And the kids just pepper him with a bunch of questions about what was your strategy and how did you do this? How did you accomplish that? And the guy's like, I won the lottery. That's my strategy. That's my
Right.
approach. That's my advice. I won the lottery. That makes Norvell sound like a fraud. And I don't want to do that. But I'm saying if it's not him, eventually that will happen a few times where guys hit the lottery. You can go back to Orgeron at LSU. So this is not some new example of a guy that went boom and then bust. But I just wonder if it's more plentiful than that from here moving forward. And then I wonder, like, how is this going to turn out for Mike Norvell? Because you're going to be hard pressed to convince me, as much as I may like the guy, that you can just put something like this in your rearview mirror and just pull the nose right back up and have things be okay 1 year later.
Yeah, it's multi-layered and it's so real when you talk about hitting the lottery. Like you can split aces playing blackjack, but there's no guarantee you're getting two face cards coming up next. You might get a 2 and a 3. You might get two face cards, and then you're doing great. It's not going to happen on every hand, but then you're going to have the other people, Josh, that I think are saying, well, your coaching acumen should at least keep it from getting this bad. Like I was talking about Florida State earlier today. 108th in third down defense, 132nd in third down conversions, 81st in penalties, 131st in rush offense, 127th in turnover margin, 112th in sacks allowed, 115th in tackles for loss allowed, 125th of plays more than 20 yards, 106 in rush defense, 131st in total off. Like that's a lot of 120s and 30s in all of college football.
Yeah.
So I still think that people are going to look at this and say, you make $10 million a year. You're a great coach. We should be able to give you Hoover High School's kids, and you can go out there and win 6 or 7 games, not be this, which I think part of that is fair. But part of that, too, is this revolving door of college sports now that not only includes talent and experience, but leadership and guys who understand different systems and guys who come in and have desire and want to prove something, as opposed to guys. I mean, let's be honest here, Josh. There are hanger honors now in college football. When I played college football, there were 1 or 2 guys on each side of the ball that were your hanger honors, like your fifth-year seniors that, okay, in an emergency situation, we might need to throw him in at tackle, or 4th-string quarterback that can be a holder if he has to be, but we're not going to run him. But like we know that he's kind of just here because he can still be here kind of guy. There's 20-30% of college football teams that are that now because they're making pretty good money, and they're probably making more money than they're going to go make in their first jobs when they leave. And they've already got a degree and they're working on another degree and whatever. So that's all tough to manage. But to your other question of can it get it to the point where it damages things, hinders things down the road? Yes, it can. I've had calls from agents already this year about coaches that you and I would not say were on the hot seat. We're not going to get fired, saying, hey, man, what do you think the situation is there?
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think's going on behind the scenes there? I'm like, why are you calling me? And they're like, well, people are asking questions about this guy. I'm like, get out of here. Like, they're not getting him out of there. Look at a situation like Billy Napier. Do we really think that can be reversed? I mean, honestly, in your gut, do you think that Billy Napier can turn this thing around? I wish he could. I hope he can. But based on everything we've heard and everything people have said, it seems very doubtful that that can be reversed.
And
And that's
there's a lot of
because of what you're
variables.
no, and that's because of what you're referencing, that
Yeah,
certain people have gotten to the point that they've said, no more. It's kind of like it's like talking to fans about Peyton Thorne earlier this year. Like McElroy and I would go back and forth about it, and he'd get really frustrated. And he'd say, you saw these interceptions. He was hit when he threw the ball. Like the ball was tipped. Like you saw the other decisions. And I said, Greg, first off, welcome to terrestrial radio. Second off, in situations like this, when people make up their minds,
done.
it's over. It's
Yeah,
done. So I think that applies to head coaches too, because you and I both know where the money's coming from. You and I both know where the power is stroked at a lot of these places. If that person or 3 out of those 5 people say this ship has sailed, whenever the time comes, we're ready to move on. It might be December. It might be next week. It might be middle of next year. But just know we are moving on, and we'll be ready to give you the rest of what we got then.
I think the other part of what you asked about Napier is, so I've got the fan analyst side of me that'll sit here and say, no, he probably can't turn it around. However, if he had Miami's remaining schedule, maybe he could turn it around because maybe that leads to a winning season. That's that side, okay? Then there's the other side that's way more jaded and calloused to this business, who knows what you just said is accurate. And what he said, for those of you listening who weren't necessarily picking up what he's putting down, is when they went in the tank about a month ago, seems like an eternity ago, when Florida really went in the tank, I started getting calls too. Yes, some of them are from agents. A lot of them are from the biggest money boosters and the people who were most connected to money around Florida. Their mind was made up. Their mind was made up. When you start hearing people speak definitively in our lane, in our avenue, about how a guy's probably done, the search firm's already in motion behind the scenes, it's not necessarily because the AD has texted you. It's because the people who make the decisions for the AD have texted you or called you. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what the mechanisms are around Mike Norvell. I think the same thing about Lincoln Riley. I think about these guys who I think are capable coaches who maybe if you just plucked them from their situation, gave them 2 years off, and gave them a fresh entry at some other place 2 years down the road, probably have success. I just don't know if this far into your tenure, he's 5 years in. Norvell's been there a decade. I just don't know if you have the equity and the rope to say, all right, I've realized the error of my ways. From this point forward, we'll do it right. They're not going to give you time to rebuild or reinvent yourself when you're making that much money.
Well, how about this? I think I heard you reference it as like the Saban Dabo problem. I used to reference it as the Saban Urban Meyer effect.
Yeah.
Whereas people just think it's going to be that every single year. And as we get further down this path of that not being real outside of Kirby Smart right now, Ryan Day right now, even though he's lost to Michigan, let's be honest, the seasons he's put together have been pretty damn good. And even though they might not be ultimately satisfactory to a certain group of people, 98% of college football would love to have those seasons. Dabo, a little bit of a dip. It hasn't been the same as it was. Who are the guys that are just going to have that sustainability every single year? And as we retrain our brains in a lot of different things with college football, how long is it going to take people to retrain their brains of, you're going to get an undefeated regular season. You're going to get a 1-loss regular season. Now maybe a playoff appearance. And there might be a 6 or 7 win season after that, maybe 2 years after that, but it can still bounce back. I go back to Kentucky and Mark Stoops. I can remember year 2 and 3 where people wanted him gone.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
We're like audibly saying he needs to go. He can't do this. And then look what he's done. He's become one of the greatest coaches in school history. So there are a lot of folks that aren't going to have that patience. Fan bases aren't going to have that patience. We might need more of it now because the reality of that elite sustainability not only feels like it's maybe gone, but if it's not gone, it's pulling away pretty fast.
I'm going to tell you the other thing that'll bite Florida State and bite Norvell, independent of what the reality of the situation is there. If Miami goes and wins the ACC, if those people have to sit there and watch them in the college football playoff, knowing they already had the recruiting upper hand on you, like I mean, Mario can pound his fist all he wants to. he could have whispered that the other day after that game, and it would be reality. I think that turns up the heat a little bit as well, whatever that means in this day and age.